Okay, today we're going to be talking about simplifying, complex numbers and finish up what we tried to do yesterday. So first thing we're going to look at is simplifying these. If we take a second, what are we going to have for 5i squared? Well, we remember that, Okay, so we remember that I squared is equal to -1. So if I have 5i squared, so if I have 5i squared, we'd have 5 times -1. We know I squared is -1, which is just going to give us -5, and we're done. Negative I squared is going to be, well, I squared is -1, so it's like the opposite of -1, which is +1, and we're done. 5i quantity squared, well, that tells us we have 5i times itself. So 5i times 5i. I know 5 times 5 is 25. I times I is I squared. Well, what's I squared? We set up here, I squared is -1. So I'd really have 25 times -1, which is a -25. And over here, the opposite of 3i squared, well, 3 times I squared is -1. So the opposite, or -3 times -1, is just a -3. Opposite of -3 is a +3. So really we're just thinking about I squared as -1. Multiplying complex numbers, we're going to manipulate these the same way, but we just have to keep in mind that I squared is equal to -1. So 3i times 3 is going to be 9i. 3i times -i is going to be a -3i squared. But we know this is the same as -3 times a -1, and -3 times -1 is equal to +3. Typically when we write these, we have the real numbers first and then the imaginary, so 3 plus 9i. Over here I'm going to distribute my -i, so I'd have a -2i. -i times -3i would be a +3i squared. So -2i plus 3 times, well, I squared we know is -1. So we've got -2i minus 3, which is the same as -3 minus 2i, having that real term first. So take a second to try these. What are we going to do? Well, I'm multiplying a binomial times a binomial. So again, I'm going to use FOIL. First terms, outside terms, inside terms, and last terms is what we're multiplying by. 2 times 3 is 6. Outside terms, 2 times -1, -2i. Inside terms, 3 times 3i is a +9i. And our last terms, 3i times -i would be a -3i squared. Okay, so let's simplify and combine what we can. I've got a 6 here, a +7i here, and then -3i squared. Well, that's -3 times -1. So that's really 6 plus 7i. Well, -3 times -1 is a +9. Or sorry, not a +9. Go back, undo. Sorry, a +3. And when we combine our 6 and our 3, we've got a 9. So 9 plus 7i. So pause the video for a second and try this one on your own. So check your video with the work. Overall, I should have gotten 13 for that. And if you're not